Foreign language skills. Intermediate B1. Module 1. What will happen if? Listening 1.1.
You can do anything. Paint a masterpiece in a minute. Learn every language in an hour. Build a multi-billion-dollar company overnight. And rule the world by tomorrow. So, what's holding you back? Why aren't you doing what you want? Didn't hear enough Mozart as a baby? Didn't eat enough veggies growing up? Or is it because you're not using your brain at its full potential? Want to know how you can? This is What If, and here's what your brain would be like at full capacity. The brain, to say the least, is very complex. We've studied it for centuries, and we're still learning more of its secrets today. But be careful, the search for facts can sometimes lead to fiction. To be smarter, your brain needs to be bigger. False. Brain size relates more to proportion than it does to intelligence. For example, here's your brain next to a whale's. Guess who's smarter? Guess whose body needs more processing power? Your brain is smaller than a whale's because your body is smaller. However, your brain is structured in a way that enables you to survive and succeed. But after all that, would you believe that humans only use 10% of their brains? Let's make it 100%. We've seen what really smart people can do. They inspire us through art, music, literature. They change the odds in sports. They come up with tools to make our lives easier, and they help organize society as a whole to make us all more powerful, for better or for worse. With access to your brain's full capacity, you're limitless. So what do? First things first, you finally get to solve the Rubik's Cube that's been collecting dust on your shelf. Call up your smartest friend and challenge them to a game of chess. Checkmate in 2 moves. Relish. When you're done being a smarty pants, you'll be looking for a real challenge, since being smart means that you won't be as stimulated by the things that keep us simpletons happy. So what's your interest? Art? Science? Technology? When you're limitless, you don't have to choose. Picasso was overrated. Sorry I'm late, I was up all night curing cancer. So I thought, why not? And that's how the time-traveling toilet came to be. Okay, back up. Limitless? What happens to your body when you're dedicating all your brain's energy to a creation, a cure, or a patent? Your lungs breathing, your heart beating, your food digesting, and your blood circulating, that's all your brain. Even if you could access 100% of your brain's capacity, you couldn't use it. You would be limited by your body's survival needs. Remember when we asked, would you believe that after all that, humans only use 10% of their brains? Did you believe it? The 10% thing is a myth, and it probably comes from a simple confusion. Your brain is 10% neurons and 90% glial cells. There are different types of neurons that take care of different functions, but in general, your neurons enable you to process and transmit information, while your glial cells surround your neurons, providing them with support and insulation. And you know what? All human brains share the same design. Your brain has just as many neurons as Albert Einstein's did. So how can you be smarter? Treat your brain like a muscle. Stimulate it. Try new things. Take on challenges. And get enough rest. Maintain healthy habits. That's the smart thing to do. And of course, it's a no-brainer.
Listening 1.2.
Imagine a world where you never need to smell the fumes of a passing car, bus, or truck, and where traffic noise is massively reduced. Imagine a world powered by something you can't touch, which will be abundant for billions of years. Imagine a world where every single home has electricity, no matter how far it is from the grid. That's the future beyond fossil fuels. Imagine governments no longer needing to subsidize fossil fuel production or spend fortunes protecting their underground fuel sources, pipes, and transmission lines. Trillions of taxpayer dollars are freed up. Smog and greenhouse gases plummet. Public health improves. This healthy future is closer than you think. Our energy system is undergoing an unstoppable transformation. The coal-fired power industry that took a century to build is being rapidly replaced by sun and wind power. forces of nature which cannot be dug out of the ground or sold on commodity markets. In this totally fossil fuel-free world, electricity belongs to everyone, is homegrown in the true sense, bringing power to the 1.3 billion people who are currently inexcusably without it. The Paris Climate Agreement bound nations of the world to work peacefully for a fossil fuel-free economy. But we need to move fast. We must harness the power of the sun and work at the speed of light. Our collective mission is to bend the curve of emissions now, so that renewable energy outcompetes fossil fuels as the best new source of energy in all markets around the world by 2020. So let's thank fossil fuels for all they have done. Their contribution to humanity has been nothing short of extraordinary. However, now that we understand the dangers and the side effects and have exciting, everlasting alternatives, it is time to retire them pronto. The journey to our fossil fuel-free future is the most exciting, the most innovative, the most necessary, the most inclusive and far-reaching global transformation we have ever seen. This is the answer to so many challenges in the world, the energy newtopia. The only question now is, how quickly can we get there?
Listening 1.3.
If I were a giant. If I were a giant, I wouldn't be able to fit in my house. I'd have to live in a building that had a high ceiling, but I'd probably have a hard time getting through the door. I'd have to make my own clothes, but where would I get a giant needle and thread to sew with? I couldn't ride in a car or a plane. I suppose I would just have to take giant steps to get from place to place. I would have to be very careful not to step on anybody or anything. When I talked, people would cover their ears. My voice would sound very loud to them. I wouldn't find shoes to cover my feet. I wouldn't find a knife and fork to eat my dinner with. I might have to use a rake as a fork. My dinner would be huge. What would I cook my dinner in? I certainly wouldn't find an oven big enough to put my dinner in. If I sneezed, it would be like a hurricane. If I fell down, it would be like an earthquake. I wouldn't have any friends because everyone would be too tiny for me to talk to. I think that being a giant would be very lonely. I couldn't have just one apple. I would have to have a lot of apples to fill me up. I would have to drink gallons and gallons of water to quench my thirst. I could never relax under a tree. I would be taller than all the trees. I don't think that being a giant would be fun. I won't ever make a wish to be a giant. I would rather be my height.
Listening 1.4.
Imagine what life would be like if you were 2 inches tall. You would have to be careful that nobody stepped on you. You would have to watch out for cats, dogs, and birds. It would be very dangerous, but just think of the things that you could do. You could live in a dollhouse or even a shoebox. You could use a bottle cap for a plate. You would have to wear doll's clothes. A stamp would make a lovely picture to hang on your wall. You could hide in a mouse hole or a drawer. You wouldn't need much food. You could probably live comfortably on the crumbs that people would leave on the table. A thimble would make a good cup. If you went outside, the grass would seem like a jungle. An insect would be huge and frightening. A puddle would seem to be an ocean. You could cross the puddle in a paper cup and use a spoon for an oar. A matchbox would make a good bed with a handkerchief as a bedspread. You'd brush your hair with a toothbrush, but you'd never find anything small enough to brush your teeth with. You could take a ride on the back of a mouse. You wouldn't find any books that were small enough to read, but you might read the back of a pill bottle. You could ride in a toy car and have a soup bowl for a swimming pool. A leaf could be your umbrella, and a mitten would make a great sleeping bag. If you used your imagination, you could think up something to use for almost all your purposes. Being small might be fun, but then again it would be frightening. I'd be afraid of my pet cat. I wouldn't want a book to fall on me. I would be afraid of being swept away by a big gust of wind. I think I'd rather be my size.
Listening 1.5.
In 1965, 17-year-old high school student Randy Garner stayed awake for 264 hours. That's 11 days to see how he'd cope without sleep. On the second day, his eyes stopped focusing. Next, he lost the ability to identify objects by touch. By day 3, Garner was moody and uncoordinated. At the end of the experiment, he was struggling to concentrate, had trouble with short-term memory, became paranoid, and started hallucinating. Although Garner recovered without long-term psychological or physical damage, for others, losing shut-eye can result in hormonal imbalance, illness, and in extreme cases, death. We're only beginning to understand why we sleep to begin with, but we do know it's essential. Adults need 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, and adolescents need about 10. We grow sleepy due to signals from our body telling our brain we are tired, and signals from the environment telling us it's dark outside. The rise in sleep-inducing chemicals like adenosine and melatonin send us into a light doze that grows deeper, making our breathing and heart rate slow down and our muscles relax. This non-REM sleep is when DNA is repaired and our bodies replenish themselves for the day ahead. In the United States, it's estimated that 30% of adults and 66% of adolescents are regularly sleep-deprived. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. Staying awake can cause serious bodily harm. When we lose sleep, learning, memory, mood, and reaction time are affected. Sleeplessness may also cause inflammation, hallucinations, high blood pressure, and it's even been linked to diabetes and obesity. In 2014, a devoted soccer fan died after staying awake for 48 hours to watch the World Cup. While his untimely death was due to a stroke, studies show that chronically sleeping fewer than 6 hours a night increases stroke risk by 4.5 times compared to those getting a consistent 7 to 8 hours of shut-eye. For a handful of people on the planet who carry a rare inherited genetic mutation, sleeplessness is a daily reality. This condition, known as fatal familial insomnia, places the body in a nightmarish state of wakefulness, forbidding it from entering the sanctuary of sleep. Within months or years, this progressively worsening condition leads to dementia and death. How can sleep deprivation cause such immense suffering? Scientists think the answer lies with the accumulation of waste products in the brain. During our waking hours, our cells are busy using up our day's energy sources, which get broken down into various byproducts, including adenosine. As adenosine builds up, it increases the urge to sleep, also known as sleep pressure. In fact, caffeine works by blocking adenosine's receptor pathways. Other waste products also build up in the brain, and if they're not cleared away, they collectively overload the brain and are thought to lead to the many negative symptoms of sleep deprivation. So, what's happening in our brain when we sleep to prevent this? Scientists found something called the glymphatic system, a cleanup mechanism that removes this buildup and is much more active when we're asleep. It works by using cerebrospinal fluid to flush away toxic byproducts that accumulate between cells. Lymphatic vessels, which serve as pathways for immune cells, have recently been discovered in the brain, and they may also play a role in clearing out the brain's daily waste products. While scientists continue exploring the restorative mechanisms behind sleep, we can be sure that slipping into slumber is a necessity if we want to maintain our health and our sanity.
Listening 1.6.
Water is virtually everywhere, from soil moisture and ice caps to the cells inside our own bodies. Depending on factors like location, fat index, age, and sex, the average human is between 55 and 60% water. At birth, human babies are even wetter. Being 75% water, they are swimmingly similar to fish. But their water composition drops to 65% by their first birthday. So what role does water play in our bodies? And how much do we actually need to drink to stay healthy? The H2O in our bodies works to cushion and lubricate joints, regulate temperature, and to nourish the brain and spinal cord. Water isn't only in our blood. An adult's brain and heart are almost 3/4 water. That's roughly equivalent to the amount of moisture in a banana. Lungs are more similar to an apple at 83%, and even seemingly dry human bones are 31% water. If we are essentially made of water and surrounded by water, why do we still need to drink so much? Well, each day we lose 2 to 3 liters through our sweat, urine, and bowel movements, and even just from breathing. While these functions are essential to our survival, we need to compensate for the fluid loss. Maintaining a balanced water level is essential to avoid dehydration or overhydration, both of which can have devastating effects on overall health. At first detection of low water levels, sensory receptors in the brain's hypothalamus signal the release of antidiuretic hormone. When it reaches the kidneys, it creates aquaporins, special channels that enable blood to absorb and retain more water, leading to concentrated dark urine. Increased dehydration can cause notable drops in energy, mood, skin moisture, and blood pressure, as well as signs of cognitive impairment. A dehydrated brain works harder to accomplish the same amount as a normal brain, and it even temporarily shrinks because of its lack of water. Overhydration, or hyponatremia, is usually caused by overconsumption of water in a short amount of time. Athletes are often the victims of overhydration because of complications in regulating water levels in extreme physical conditions. Whereas the dehydrated brain amps up the production of antidiuretic hormone, the overhydrated brain slows or even stops releasing it into the blood. Sodium electrolytes in the body become diluted, causing cells to swell. In severe cases, the kidneys can't keep up with the resulting volumes of dilute urine. Water intoxication then occurs, possibly causing headache, vomiting, and in rare instances, seizures or death. But that's a pretty extreme situation. On a normal day-to-day basis, maintaining a well-hydrated system is easy to manage for those of us fortunate enough to have access to clean drinking water. For a long time, conventional wisdom said that we should drink 8 glasses a day. That estimate has since been fine-tuned. Now, the consensus is that the amount of water we need to imbibe depends largely on our weight and environment. The recommended daily intake varies from between 2.5 to 3.7 liters of water for men and about 2 to 2.7 liters for women, a range that is pushed up or down if we are healthy, active, old, or overheating. While water is the healthiest hydrator, other beverages, even those with caffeine like coffee or tea, replenish fluids as well. And water within food makes up about 1/5 of our daily H2O intake. Fruits and vegetables like strawberries, cucumbers, and even broccoli are over 90% water and can supplement liquid intake while providing valuable nutrients and fiber. Drinking well might also have various long-term benefits. Studies have shown that optimal hydration can lower the chance of stroke, help manage diabetes, and potentially reduce the risk of certain types of cancer. No matter what, getting the right amount of liquid makes a world of difference in how you'll feel, think, and function day to day.
Listening 1.7.
Imagine the possibilities that would come with living forever. You could spend more time with loved ones, master a variety of careers, and travel the entire world. If everyone on Earth were immortal, we'd all have a chance to recover from our mistakes, and our society could save a ton of money on healthcare. How close are we to achieving it? And how would longer lifespans change the nature of our relationships? Would we ever get bored of living? This is What If, and here's what would happen if humans were immortal. First things first, achieving immortality the way it's portrayed in the movies, where you can jump off a building and live to tell the tale, is highly unlikely. However, immortality where people don't die of old age could be right around the corner. Would our planet be able to handle a population of people with ever-expanding lifespans? In Silicon Valley, there's a movement of billionaires and biotech companies that are developing drugs to eliminate aging and extend healthy lifespans indefinitely. In their opinion, playing around with genetics and reducing caloric intakes have already proven to extend the lifespans of flies, worms, and mice, so why couldn't it work for humans? Regardless of whether these efforts are successful, the real question is, are we ready for longer lifespans? There are almost 8 billion of us on this planet, and if we all start living for centuries on end, life is going to look a lot different. Just think of the social implications that would come along with that. For starters, the idea of being married to someone your whole life might become a thing of the past. With a lifelong union potentially comprising upwards of 1,000 years together, we might start looking at marriages as a bunch of long-term commitments we make throughout our lives. Living longer would also mean we'd all be working a lot more. No pension plan in the world would be able to support you if you stopped working at 65 and then lived to 500. Longer careers would be a blessing and a curse. On the positive side, with so many skilled workers staying in the workforce, our economy would be more productive than ever. But on the other hand, if people stayed in their positions for hundreds of years, then there'd be no room for young people to find jobs and move up. This sort of stagnation would become a problem in other areas, like social progression. If the same old thinking leaders from the 18th century never died or retired from power, who's to say we'd ever be able to progress past problems like racial segregation? Even if our society found a way to regulate itself, what would the whole immortality experience be like for you as an individual? If we had virtually endless days ahead of us, wouldn't that take away a big part of what makes life special? There'd be less incentive to make every day count, and as a result, we might end up with a bunch of unhappy people on our planet. Oh, and by the way, that planet's not getting any bigger. It's just going to keep getting more crowded. Earth already has an overpopulation problem, and if the death rate slows to a halt, then our resources are going to start running out quickly. Suddenly, the idea of immortality doesn't seem so great after all. Eventually, we wouldn't have any room for new generations. Maybe we'd have to start shipping people out to settle on other planets.